Yes, yes, yes. Like we always do at this time, IMHO Talk Show. You know where we're at. You know how to find us. The flagship station, 101 Jam Charles was #1 for R&B, hip hop, and the classics. Tell a friend, tell a friend. You got Sir Charles right now in your listening ear. And man, I told you I was going to be good. So now is the time to text, tell everybody to tune in, because if they've missed the show thus far, tell them they still got time, because we are here with none other than the esteemed Dr. Jalane Schmidt, and we are so happy to have her back with us. Jalane and I were talking about all that she has going on, and it's a blessing to know people that are just so well connected and are so much about good work, to where you don't even know why they're here. Right, but we just know that having her here today was we're gonna talk about something good, and so but what we're gonna do, y'all, is we're gonna talk based from the Memory Project at UVA's KARSH Institute of Democracy. The Memory Project, there is sort of the umbrella of all the great work that Dr. Smith does. We're talking about Swords in the Plowshare. We're talking about Justice for John Henry James. We're talking about the sales of enslaved people, and the Civil Rights Tour that most of you have heard about and seen about. The touching, beautiful pictures from the tours, and the great experiences from that. But Jalane, thank you for joining us on the airwaves once again.
Thank you, Charles, for having me on. Pleasure to be back.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Like, so where do we start? Kind of give an introduction to yourself. For the good people, because I know for everybody that knows you, there may be somebody that does not, and I'm sure anybody that's streaming has seen your lovely face around the Jefferson and other places. So sort of give us a background on yourself, so we know what got you started in such great work.
Sure. So I'm Jalane Schmidt, and I'm an associate professor of religious studies at the University of Virginia, and I'm the director of the KARSH Institute of Democracy's Memory Project. And I've been heading up that project, the Memory Project, now for several years. And it's a vehicle to sponsor events, commemorations, and different initiatives around the community that promote more democratic narratives about our past. Because, so many times the way that kind of conventional stories, operate about ourselves, about our country, about our community, really work to exclude a lot of people,
Right.
especially the very people who, built, our community and our country. And so we're doing it's kind of an intervention. The Memory Project is an intervention, to, promote, stories about ourselves and kind of retelling our narrative so that we can see everybody, all parts of our community. When we talk about our past,
Right. So the Memory Project, how long has it been around? Is that something that was sort of more recently contrived?
Yeah, it's about 3 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's under the KARSH Institute of Democracy at the University of Virginia, which is a larger organization across the various different units and schools at the university that is trying to promote, democratic processes, in various different kind of units and laboratories, within there. We've got people that are looking at, the law. We've got people that are looking at sound and music. We've got people looking at the environment. And then I'm doing my work, of course, with, looking at memory politics and memory culture.
Okay. Memory politics and memory culture. So before we get too deep into, to the nuances of that, let's do a realness check. We got to do a realness check.
All right.
Because you know this community well enough that whenever you say the initials UVA,
oh yes,
the red flags go up.
Oh yes, and they
the
should.
So on a personal level, like, how do you balance, being such an advocate, such an activist, like so outspoken when it comes to, to the rights and correcting wrong? But we have the big UVA right here.
We got to start right at home talking about that. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, interesting you should ask that. For the past several years, I've been teaching in the first year engagement seminars at UVA. And these are for entering class coming in. And they have to take at least 4 of these classes, right, in their first year. The class that I teach is called Town and Gown.
Oh, okay.
And it looks at the kinds of problems that are a pattern across the country in university communities, which is wealth inequality, exploitation, of a community, kind of extractive logics, of economics, that kind of transfer wealth to the university. And that's also true in Charlottesville. And so we use as our case study for this Town and Gown class, we look at the case of UVA in Charlottesville.
Right.
And, we go back all the way to, the founding of the university, Jefferson, slavery, the whole thing, and come up to the present and talk about, for instance, issues of, low wages, income inequality, and gentrification, and how UVA is the largest employer in town, and it's the largest landowner in town. So we kind of live in a company town here.
Yeah.
When UVA gets a cold, we all get the flu or something. We're very, it has an outsized influence on our community. And so we study exactly that. And so I want students that are incoming to UVA, to know about the history of the university with which they're affiliated. I call it, sometimes tongue-in-cheek, I call it hashtag not the admissions brochure, or hashtag, UVA's dirty laundry. But, but these are all the things that we need to know. And I say, like, y'all are grown-ups now. You come to the grown-up table. You in the holidays, and you sit with your little cousins at the kids' table for many years, and then there come a time when, right? I mean, when they stop sitting, it's like, oh, no, this grown folks talk. Now, y'all, you just go back to watching your cartoons or whatever, But then there come a time, when it's like, okay, you have a seat at the grown-ups, and then you kind of hear some real talk about what's really going on, about why, Uncle Oliver acts so funny, or why Cousin Bob over here doing that, you start, getting the lowdown, you know what I mean? Right. And so I say to my students, I said, you taking this Town and Gown class, you're at the grown-ups table now. We're going to talk about what the problems are, why things are the way they are, and what we can do to fix them, importantly. Right. So I bring that into the classroom. I do have, kind of a sensibility of an organizer, that there's been a lot of people for a lot of years doing stuff here in Charlottesville. I'm a more recent arrival. I came in 2007. But I'm trying to, kind of listen to those concerns, bring those concerns into the classroom at UVA.
I may have to enroll in this class. That sounds good.
Well, I can throw the syllabus up online. Happy to do that. Yeah,
let's do it. Yeah, with so much sort of housing talk and cost of living and affordability. This really makes me think about when you mentioned Town and Gown, it makes me think about also when you have sort of the community and then they're face to face with developers. And things of that sort. You know what I mean? It's like, so there's this constant divide that we're trying to find how to sort of merge and sort of work together. So sort of leading off of that thought, like when I was listening to you just now, you're making me think about the sort of the head of state pressures that's coming down, and like maybe how you're approaching that. Because when we look at the great work that the president's council appears to try to be doing, with President Ryan and VP McDonald and all that. We have state leadership that's and really national leadership that's trying to to put the clamps down on anything that looks diverse, that looks equitable, that looks inclusive, and and we've seen that the measures of how far some folks will go when it comes to you can't question history. Because what I hear you saying is that you question a lot of history, and you're trying to correct a lot of wrong. So I'm curious, again that state connection, I guess have you seen any bearing on your work or any limitations on your work? When it comes to the sort of the threats and pressures of DEI, that type of things being squashed.
I mean, I have not thus far, anyway, felt any kind of impingement on the work that I do. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and it's important to bear in mind that like UVA as a state-affiliated university, I mean, there's always vagaries in the political climate. Like I said, I've been here since 2007. I remember when AG Ken Cuccinelli was breathing down the neck of Professor Michael Mann, saying that the climate change research she was doing was bogus, and and all and going into his inbox and trying, all there's been all kinds of pressures, always are,
Yeah.
it's always shifting, with the political climate, and, and I don't assume that'll be any different, right now, I mean, I'm not changing anything. I've not been pressured, told to change anything,
Right.
and I don't intend to,
Yeah. And I think the beauty of it is too, a lot of it is just sort of scary titles, because I actually live in one of the local rural counties. And, like I've lived in Charlottesville as well, but currently I'm in one of the rural counties who doesn't even deserve to be naming them. The only reason I'm there is because of family ties, but, but that's besides the point. It's like I found when I go to certain like county meetings and even school board meetings and things like that, like people kind of just want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And like, and like the work can stay the same. As long as you don't call it that. Why you gotta call it that? Like, why does it have to be labeled that? You know what I mean? Like, and I've seen the simplest things of just changing the name of an initiative, and people are happy. Well, yeah, I don't care what the name is. But yeah. So yeah, we are joined by Jalane Schmidt of the Memory Project. So Jalane, as far as this great work that you've been doing, we kind of got the preface out of the way, and folks should be familiar with you now. So I guess first bring us up to speed. Like when it comes to the swords into plowshares.
Sure.
Because I know some folks have been seeing and been receiving the newsletters. We've been sharing the PR communications in regards to the current litigations around it. But just give a quick debrief on what swords into plowshares is and sort of what's been done.
Sure. Yeah. So Swords into Plowshares is a project that is taking the Lee statue, which formerly stood in what was then called Lee Park, in the center of Charlottesville, taking that statue and transforming its materials, the bronze, into ingots in order to give that bronze material to an artist to create public art for our community that expresses our values of inclusion. So to take something, so this is Swords into Plowshares, that's from the book of Isaiah. Isaiah 2:4, says, they shall turn their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. So taking instruments of violence and destruction, divisiveness, and transforming them into instruments that cultivate things for our sustenance and well-being. So that's what that's about. So we're, looking at this statue that did so much harm in our community, and seeing, what can we do to transform that into something that actually nurtures our community. So that's the goal there. And for those that still, don't think that statue was doing anything. I sometimes hear people, that statue not doing anything. Some of the most painful things I ever heard, was when folks would say, well, that statue not doing anything. I don't go down there anyway. Not being aware that historically, that area, McKee Road, where the Jack, that used to be a black neighborhood. Right. But our sense, now I'm talking now as Black Charlottesville residents, our sense of like where we belong, where is our space, where we can circulate, has been so truncated. By many different things, by, of course, Vinegar Hill development. Well, the McKee Road development, that was 50 years before Vinegar Hill. The black folks got pushed out there near the courthouse, and the Jackson statue got put in. You know what I mean? So many different ways. Even contemporary on the mall. Not everybody feels welcome on the downtown mall. You can't afford $40 for a steak and $20 for a glass of wine. You just got to move on along. You know what I mean? And so it's about reclaiming public space and making it public in the true sense of that word, that everybody belongs there. So what would it mean to have beautiful public space that have beautiful art in it that expressed our values? You know what I mean? And so we're looking at, for instance, I don't know if you've seen, Charles, have you gone to the University of Virginia and seen the memorial to enslaved laborers there?
Yes.
Beautiful piece of art. Beautiful, landscape installation there that honors the lives of enslaved folks who built the university.
Right.
So much symbolism imbued there. The round circle, like a broken shackle, and just all the names that are etched in and the history. It's just beautifully done. And that memorial to enslaved labor at UVA was done through a democratic process. The community was consulted. hey, and especially descendants, hey, what would it look like to honor your ancestors who worked there? What would that look like? And then an artist came in, landscape designers came in and talked with folk about how to do that. And what it showed is that you can have a democratic process inform the artistic process and have a beautiful result. It is possible to do this.
Yeah.
And so we want to do the same for the Lee statue. That the Lee statue honored someone who tried to undermine our democracy.
Right.
Who led a war to preserve slavery in a breakaway, illegitimate republic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, so to have a representation of that in public space supported by tax dollars, that, as Zion and Bryant told us, 6 years ago, it's like you can't have that. You know what I mean? And so that's why, it's important to. That's why it was important to remove that, because that's not our values, and this is public space, and so we need to remove, something that isn't embracing, the common values that we hold, in a constitutional democracy. It can't be there in a public place. It either needs to be in a museum, right, or somewhere else. Now, in our case, we tried to find museums. I want everybody to know that, because people are like, why don't you just go put it in a museum? I'm gonna tell you the dirty little secret: museums don't want them. We talked to the Smithsonian, we talked to Civil War museums. Did nobody want it? The only people who want it, Charles, are the very people who shouldn't have it. Okay?
Makes sense.
The only because I mean, just practically speaking, it is a lot of work to maintain a 11,000 piece hunk of metal. That's on a granite plinth. It's a lot of work. You have to if you're gonna have it inside, you got to reinforce your floors.
Right.
If you're gonna have it outside, you got to lay a whole cement platform. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Right.
A lot of work.
Yeah, to your point, people, when it comes to convincing people, when you have those types of conversations, it's like the symbolism so many times, it affects you subconsciously.
Exactly.
Like I personally, I would equate it to like when you're driving down the highway and you see like this huge, larger than life Confederate flag, and it makes you question things like, am I safe here? Wow, like, what's the point of that? Right. I mean, like I even go a step further, and like when you see like the European Jesus on a church fan in black churches, that's
inside your head. That's in there.
Mental.
Yes.
But it's things years ago maybe didn't even think about. But when somebody brings that knowledge and light, then I think we need to start looking at those types of things from different perspectives. But and also you bring up the point of what should be done with it, and sort of like the thought process behind source to plowshare. So I'm curious, how has the community been involved in that, and are there different members of the community that make up the group? Or what does that look like when it comes to community say? Yeah.
So we, this, of course, the owner of the statue, of the Lee statue, is the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. And so the Jefferson School is part of a coalition of organizations and individuals in our community that are involved in this process called Swords into Plowshares. And so there are art organizations, religious organizations, different activist organizations, that have come together and said, yes, this is something we want to support. We want our community's public spaces to reflect our values of inclusivity. Okay. So what we did was we went around for a number of months, last year, to different events, parks and churches, different places, block parties and such, had table there, had a survey, help people fill out a survey, or help them go to the QR code and and fill out a survey to say what would you like in public space, to ask people, what's going on with that. And so we've tallied up those results, and we're putting them into booklet form, and we're preparing probably sometime later this month, in late September, early October, to have an event at the Jefferson School where we will present these results to the community. Okay. What was said, about public space, what was said about what art should look like. And in so doing, and having this presentation to the community, and also to City Council, give to City Council, and to potential donors and potential artists too, who might be interested in supporting, or participating in this process going forward.
Yeah. Now, what's been the approach to the folks who sort of don't want anything to do with it? Like when it comes to not touching history, and or maybe even seeing it like a negative thing. You know what it really makes me think of? Like, it either makes me think of like the reason some folks don't celebrate certain holidays. They say, well, you know, like that was actually pagan. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, we shouldn't have anything to do with that. But then you have the other folks that say, but with the pagans, there, you know, doesn't have anything to do with what a Christian may do,
Mm-hmm.
because it means something totally different to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like a lot of the conversations that I heard around this, you know, like sort of had that same ideology of like that's history, like let's not even touch. I even heard like let's maybe build our own thing around the statue.
Yeah.
You remember that one?
That seems like a lot of resources to invest in something that is already toxic.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and you know, that's that's you know not what we want to do. We want to have, you know, kind of people coming together and yeah.
That's very interesting. We are joined by Jalane Schmidt, a memory project at UVA KARSH Institute on Democracy. And so, like some of the herbs, right? Because we, you know, like, of course, you knew this wasn't going to be an easy work.
No.
But when it comes to, you know, to what's been, you know, what's been attempted so far, like where are we now? Like, sort of, what brought us to the point of some things being tied up in litigation, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, part of this is the conflict of history versus memory, and these are not the same things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people say, "Oh, you're destroying history." It's like, no, we're not destroying history. Nobody has forgotten General Lee or ever will.
Right.
What we're doing is reframing that history, and it's the you know remembering the history, you know, of the Civil War through the lens of those who had the most to gain and to lose from it, namely enslaved African Americans. You know what I mean? And so it's this reframing process. You know, we're taking this object, this material artifact, the Lee statue, you know, and are proposing to, you know, transform it, you know, into something else. And it points to the transmogrification of memory too. That we don't want to celebrate Lee.
Yeah.
We want to celebrate rather, you know, the values that we say that we aspire to hold, that we profess to hold. You know what I mean?
Right.
And in doing that, some folks do not approve of that memory process of that kind of transformation that we're doing. You know, and want to hold on to a certain version of history.
Yeah.
And you know, and so what you're seeing is you're seeing a struggle, you know, there. And so you know, some folks who are, you know, kind of you know, they kind of self-styled preservationists, I guess. You know, they might, you know, call it. I'm being as generous as possible.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, you know, we got FCC guidelines.
Oh yeah. You know, but you know, do not want to see that sort of transformation go on. That, you know, they're conservative in the sense that they want to conserve, right?
Yeah.
You know, the kind of the current status quo, you know what I mean? And the object, you know, that represents what they consider to be enduring values, but what we consider to be harmful, or values that really papered over or whitewashed. A lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and a lot of struggle, a lot of effort that was made to make our country the multiracial democracy that it tries to be. You know what I mean? And so that's what we want to, if we're going to be in public space, that's what we got to celebrate. And so, yes, so some people do not like that. They want to conserve things the way they are. And we're saying there's something new that's trying to be born here, and transformations are difficult. It's a struggle. It is. And so it's no surprise that there would be a lawsuit. That's where, when we're at our most civil, we try to resolve disputes nonviolently and according to legal precepts to which all are subject, right? And so that's, you know, that's where it's playing out. Is in the courts. You know, if you've seen the news reports, you know, you've seen that, you know, kind of count by count has been dismissed, you know, and even one of the plaintiffs, you know, has been dismissed. It was kind of, you know, the plaintiff had forgotten to file their 501c3 nonprofit papers for 6-7 years in a row. You know, I mean, they didn't even exist as a legal entity, that is to say. And once that was presented in court, it's like, hey, this organization is not even up to snuff. How can you be suing the Jefferson School that's like duly you know, filed all its papers every year faithfully, you know, with the state nonprofit commission, you know what I mean? And then here you got somebody over here trying to sue you. Right. That hadn't even done, that's not even, exactly. So, you know, so that plaintiff was removed, and now it's, you know, there's, you know, one remaining plaintiff and one remaining count, and, you know, and it, you know, remains to be seen what the judge will do. We, with swords and plowshares, I mean, we are resolute, no matter how things go with the, I think the proposal to melt down the statue, of course, it's quite provocative and it's attracted a lot of attention, but our primary goal here with swords and plowshares is to transform public space. To have public space that is worthy and welcoming, to the whole community. So that's the goal. So no matter what happens with the material elements, of the statute, we're gonna definitely be going on with trying to figure out what does it mean to have these parks, have these places.
Right. Yeah, it always blows my mind on how like a lot of times activists get called sort of like unpatriotic or like un-American, and they're usually at odds with folks who have more of a Confederate way of thinking, and it's kind of like, well, wasn't the Confederacy opposed to the to the U.S. to the current fabric of of what we're supposed to be about.
Exactly.
So then I think that highlights your point about like change being difficult and whatnot, because like and I definitely want to get your take on this, because what I find is that a lot of times things changing feels unstable because because of the uncertainty.
That's right.
Because the change, like there's new ways, and you may have to learn something. You have to educate yourself about it.
That's right.
And it just feels very uncertain. So I think a lot of times people may not have any like malice about it. Sometimes, some of them do, of course. But it's just a matter of this. Like the standard, the status quo feels safe. Not that I hate
it's what's
you,
known.
Jalane,
It's what's known. It's what's known.
Yeah.
And actually, the status quo, it depends upon a lot of silences being maintained and a lot of memories being suppressed. In the public discourse. And so we're saying the status quo is actually harmful. And to the point that you say, someone who is in disagreement, to the point that you can't see that and don't experience it, shows that you've actually kind of bought into a whole lot of silences and a whole lot of memory suppressions that's actually very painful. And we got to lance that boil, or whatever metaphor you want to use. It's like it needs light and air here in order to go on and grow, move forward. And that means adopting a more inclusive set of narratives, that is able to incorporate, the fullest range of people who, in our country, into this narrative. And that's going to be difficult for some folks who don't feel like some of us should have the voice that we are now asserting. It's a change. It's easier to just go with the status quo. That's it's a negative piece. It's a suppression, kind of thing going on. But that's what's comfortable for a lot of people. But for many of us, it's uncomfortable, and we're not comfortable staying in that. And we need to push on towards something else. We're progressive. We're pushing towards something, and that does take effort for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and so, regardless as far as in the plowshares, like sort of close out that topic, and then we'll take a quick break, and we'll come right back to the other great work you have going on. But as far as the community needs, because like I said, we've seen your press releases, and we've been trying to help communicate those. So when it comes to a call to action, on the community's part, I definitely want to give you an opportunity to sort of speak directly about that. And then lastly, sort of like the long-term plan, for the transform statues. If this is something like that you maybe have like national ties, other cities going through the same thing. Is this something like that you want to resonate, or is this just Lee statue and we're done? So. Yeah,
well, first of all, those of us that are involved in swords and plowshares, we are not advocating that every statue in every community be melted down, or even every statue from this community be melted down. This is a specific response to a specific statue at a specific time. Specifically, this is about the Schrader-Lintelli. Those are the two sculptors involved. The 1924 Lee statue in Charlottesville, Virginia. Okay. It is, just aesthetically speaking, it's a very poor work of art. It's the kind of a case of too many chefs spoiled the soup kind of thing. The original artist died, before the commission was completed, and a less talented successor was brought in, and and the result was you have basically a high school art project in our Central Park. It's very out of different parts of it are very out of proportion. So we really don't. We feel like we're doing the art world a favor by taking it out of commission. There are plenty of other 15 or 16 other exemplars, monuments of Lee that are of far better quality than this one. And then furthermore, of course, as we know, this particular Lee statue was just a beacon of hate, for our community. We were attacked. People were killed, and so it's just again in the spirit of turning swords into plowshares. It's this specific statue in this specific community. It's such a beacon. Anywhere it would go, to a museum, a battlefield, etc., it would continue to attract that. We know that because in the 3 or 4 years after the Unite the Right rally, the fascists still kept coming. They'd put their stickers up, they'd hold their little rallies. I mean, it would always be that way. And as I mentioned, we called all museums, the reputable ones, and do you want this statue? Would you? Nobody wants it. There's a glut in the market, if you will, right now of Confederate statues, and most museums don't. Most museums don't want them. The only ones who do are the very people who shouldn't have that, who want to continue to put forward this lost cause, very damaging lost cause narrative about the Civil War. And so we're just saying, in this case, for this statue, this is the choice that this community is making at this time.
Yeah, and you just mentioned Civil War, but people need to even look back to 1924, as you said. If you look at the community and things that that occurred to Black people around that time frame, it's like then maybe that will bring the point home a little closer, and they won't think this was hundreds of years ago.
No, it wasn't. I mean, this is 1924. That's the Virginia Racial Integrity Act. The so-called one-drop rule is codified into state law. That's all the eugenicist stuff that's going on at University of Virginia. The Klan was really having a heyday. If you look at the installation ceremonies, for the Lee statue, and I made a documentary film about this last year. I'd give you a link to that to put on your Facebook page. Yeah. If you look at the in the lead up to the installation ceremony of the Lee statue in 1924 and after, there's this big uptick in Klan activity. And indeed, one of the speakers at the Lee installation rally was a Klansman. Which is to say, polite Charlottesville society at that time was not averse to rubbing shoulders with a Klansman as an invited speaker. There. So there's a lot of toxicity, that is wrapped up with this. And there's a whole history here, and so we're trying to transform. We're trying to transform it. We're trying to transform our grief and trauma.
Yes.
We're trying to transform our public spaces so that we all can feel welcome there.
Yes. Transforming the grief and trauma is
into something beautiful and with beauty and creativity. That's the point here.
Yeah. To change the way people think is huge. Because like PTSD comes in many ways.
Yes, it does.
Many ways.
That's right.
So as far as folks reaching out, and we'll bring this up at the end as well, but I'm not sure with your different work, it may be different people to contact, but as far as this, them staying in touch about information, because I know you all have a mailing list.
SIPCville.com. That's SIPCville.com. SIPCville.com has updates. That's the website for Swords into Plowshares. We're continuing that, press releases and media reports, as we're going forward. We're waiting to hear, what will be the, judge's decision on, some of the motions that are being considered. So we'll just see,
Awesome. Sounds good.
And I would invite people to, keep watching the Jefferson School Facebook page and website, coming up. We're going to have that community report back, sometime in the next few weeks. And people can participate in that way to make their opinions known.
Sounds good. So, Dr. Schmidt, we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And then we'll come right back to you. So, hey, y'all. So here's your time to go. Take a bathroom break. Call your friend or whatnot. Tell them that they must tune in. So we have more edutainment with none other than Dr. Jalane Schmidt, the Memory Project at UVA KARSH Institute of Democracy. So you got Sir Charles' IMHO Talk Show. Be right back.
Saturday, September 16th.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles Mismax Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion
with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
I am HO Talk Show. Still here, still standing with her other Dr. Jalane Schmidt, and just a wealth of knowledge, y'all. Before she left, we also wanted to give the opportunity for her to talk about the other great work that she's done, because arguably, Swords in the Plowshares, may have garnered most attention, maybe, but there's so much other great work that also, needs to be highlighted. While we have her here, one is the Justice for John Henry James. For those who don't know who John Henry James is, go ahead and give us the history of Mr.
Sure.
His story.
Yeah, so John Henry James was a resident of our community, African American man, he was an ice cream vendor here and a laborer, and he was lynched in 1898, just outside of town. And one of the things that we've been working on since in this community since 2016 is to bring more attention to that history. Again, it's about surfacing history that's always been there but not remembered. So again, this is kind of getting to that distinction I was making earlier, that history and memory aren't necessarily the same thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Or correct. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Also, yeah, right, exactly. There's a lot of historical narratives that circulate that are just plain incorrect. Some of them, So we, in 2018, 1 year after Unite the Right, we went out to the lynching site, which is near what is today abuts the country club there at Farmington Country Club. Yeah. We had a ceremony out there at the lynching site.
Mm-hmm.
We, collected some of the soil, and Ms. Zion Bryant and Mayor Nakaya Walker were there. All getting this together. And then we took that soil down to Montgomery, Alabama, to the National Memorial for Lynching Victims that's there at the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. So that's something that our community was taking steps. Since 2016, 2017, 2018, and now you look up his name. You Google John Henry James. Boom, 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 boom. It's just populated. The website is just populated with all this information. He's in our memory. This is our neighbor. You know what I mean? And he was there all along. He was part of the history. We just didn't remember him. You see what I mean? See what I mean? So, and doing these kinds of activities, having rituals, having pilgrimages, as we did. We went on a trip together. A delegation of 100 of us. Went in 2018, and again in 2022, and again here just a few months ago. Delegations of Charlottesville, both town and gown folks. Folks from UVA, folks in the community who went together down to Alabama, and to other sites, learning about our history. This is about, that history. It's been sitting there.
Yeah.
It's all about, what I mean, but really learning about, the Montgomery bus boycott, or the Birmingham campaign, or Selma, the Selma to Montgomery march, all that kind of stuff, has been really important. So I'm about making learning opportunities available, that are very kind of tactile, I feel like most people learn their history. Well, most people learn their history from Disney movies. I gotta say, which is not always good. But most people, are not going to be sitting down and reading a thick book written by a professor.
Right.
Most people aren't in a college classroom. Listening to me lecture and this sort of thing. There's got to be ways that are more accessible to the public, and that's what I'm about: is public scholarship. And so things like. Producing the documentary that I produced last year, about Charlottesville statues, and that's on PBS, and I'll give you the link for that so your listeners can have that,
Okay.
Things like taking these tours, down south, these civil rights tours, teachers come along, community members come along, UVA folk, students from the high school come along, and learning together, as we're going from place to place. I really feel like we learn better when we're actually in the places. where things happen. It's like we're never going to forget. You know, those of us that went down south on the civil rights tour, we will never forget the courthouse in Sumner, Mississippi, where Emmett Till's murderers were tried and acquitted. There's something about sitting in that space. It's like you never forget that. You know, and that's real, and it's just like, so I like holding, you know, kind of commemorative events like this, or supporting commemorative events, whether it's descendants, you know, having a vigil at the slave auction block, you know, downtown, or whether it's going to court, you know, to try to dismiss, you know, this indictment that was levied against Mr. John Henry James, our former neighbor. You know, these are public events, you know, that people can come to. You know, it's an hour out of their life,
right?
You know, something like that, or maybe a week out of their life. They're going on the civil rights tour, you know, and they're learning about history, and it's in a way that is so participatory and so accessible that they're not going to forget. It's not like memorizing dates and names, you know, to regurgitate on a test. This is something that's embodied because we're learning it together as a group and in a place. We're going to the courthouse,
right?
You know, and we're sitting in a hearing. You know, to try to seek justice for John Henry James, you know, dismissing this indictment. Or we're going around Court Square to where the site of the slave auction block was, and we're standing there mournfully, you know, and we're listening to the words of formerly enslaved folks, you know, or we're going to these, you know, these different sites that we went with the civil rights tour. It's doing these kinds of, you know, embodied learning experiences that I think are most effective.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
And that's why the Confederates, that's why these neo-Confederates love their reenactment events, don't they? Because they know something. They know. It's like, you know, and then they have, you know, all these little boys coming out, you know, dressed as their, you know, Confederate soldier outfits, and the girls in their hoop skirts and all the things. You know what I mean? It's that they onto something, you know. They know that kind of embodying these characters, you know, and doing it.
Teaching the next generation.
That's right, and much more accessible than sitting down and reading a book about it. You know, even could be even kind of if you're into that kind of thing, enjoy it. You go and have a camp out over the weekend, you know, at a battlefield and stuff. These people do. You go down the road here, you know, people doing this every once in a while. So anyway, so that's people learn history, you know, in embodied ways and by joining together and in places where stuff happens.
Now, in sort of the same regard of, you know, how Swords and the Plowshares has a leaf statue as sort of the, you know, like the epitome of it is like the story of John Henry James, like coming to be, and like just that incident gets tackled, or did this actually unmask to where you can do more civil rights tours, maybe, you know, to like for other folks who maybe were wrongfully convicted or whatever the case is. Did this unmask more stories? Yeah,
well, I mean, it did kick loose some things. We heard, like in 2018, when we were starting to really work on this in earnest, you know, getting the soil together from the lynching site, you know, preparing to go to Montgomery with it. We did start hearing from folks, older folks, who said, "Oh yes, my father used to work out at Farmington Country Club, and he said," he would point down the road, and he said, "Down there, that's where the lynching tree is." So we're talking, this is people talking about in the 60s and 70s, you know, you know what I mean? The older people now talking about their parents. You know? And the lynching tree was there apparently until the 1990s. That locust tree upon which he was lynched, you know what I mean? So this is still in current memory, you know, places that instill fear, places where trauma occurred, places to stay away. That's the lynching tree down there. Don't go down there. You know what I mean? So again, that's tied to place too. You know, that kind of trauma informed, you know, and that's also a way of learning, unfortunately. It is. You know, stay away from there. And how it just truncates your sense of the public space that you can safely inhabit or not.
Right.
You know, and that's what's important with talking about this, and yes, and so it has kicked up, you know, kind of memories, you know, and stuff too, you know, absolutely.
So, you know, maybe because I'm glad we got to talk about all this, because I'm seeing how it all ties together. And you know, but lastly, one of the things that you know, that you and I had discussed was, and forgive me if I'm not supposed to bring this up, like with a new project that you're working on. And like that sort of goes beyond just like the mental effects and maybe like the symbolic stuff, but actually when it comes to ways that like communities can be better suited economically, financially, and things like that, and how we can correct like a lot of the wrongs of how people of color are now behind in so many ways because of economics. Because like you're always trying to get to zero. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
right.
when you start
Exactly.
from the negative.
Exactly.
Can you mention any of that about like possibilities of, because as I mentioned to you, a lot of times big entities like the University of Virginia, and I ask folks like yourself who are great leaders, like is it ever enough? Because people on the outside a lot of times look at good work is being done, but there's always more to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
right.
when you look at whether it's the university or people who may be like well off in within our communities, like what are some like some of your hopes like when it comes to us really getting to the nitty gritty of how to like sort of flip this thing and like really empower people like on an everyday basis.
Yeah. I mean, so there are a lot of material inequities here, that have been built over generations that aren't going to be undone by just building a new monument, that's prettier and more inclusive, that sort of thing. I mean, we need those kind of symbols. Symbols are important, you know what I mean, and they help to ground us, in our space and in our communities. So don't get me wrong there. But yes, there are these material inequities, that have been going for a long time, and and there is kind of a sense for like what should be the contribution of UVA to the community, given the fact that UVA is the largest employer in the community, the largest landowner in the community. That UVA proper, now there's UVA Foundation is this is kind of gets more complicated, but UVA proper owns about 100 plots of property here in the community, and doesn't pay any taxes on it because UVA is, notwithstanding its $14.5 billion endowment, is still considered a nonprofit organization. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
And like that's just a drop in the bucket. Like for them to pay taxes, like let's be real.
It would be about 15. It'd be about 15.
Like for them, it's about
yes. Oh, absolutely.
But for the city, it would be huge.
It would be huge. Exactly. I mean, if UVA paid, I'm talking UVA proper now, not UVA Foundation. We're just like keep our on the so-called nonprofit entity here. If they were paying taxes on those 90-some parcels of property, it would be about $15.5 million a year, which is. That's just pocket change. It's actually not even pocket change. That's pocket lint, for UVA. You know what I mean? $15.5 million a year. To be given that to Charlottesville, that would make that'd be 15% or so of Charlottesville's annual budget. You know what I mean? I mean, it would make such a difference. So there are some. I think some models that are emerging in certain other places too, in other elite universities, and I'm going to point to here. Yale, in New Haven, Connecticut, has recently entered into it's called a pilot program. And pilot is an acronym that stands for Payment in Lieu of Taxes. Okay. And Yale, uber wealthy, private Ivy League university, has entered into an agreement with New Haven, and I think they're agreeing to pay about $90 million a year. To New Haven. Now, this was kind of nudged along because the Connecticut state legislature also kind of passed, was nudging this along as well. But it's the same situation. It's across the country in a lot of different university communities where the university is kind of, almost a company town. There's been pressure. There have been campaigns like this in Philly at Penn as well, and in other places, to saying, hey, pay your fair share. Be a good, just be a good fiscal citizen. Don't pretend like you don't, have the money. You're the and we're not talking about the, community college down the road here. We're talking about elite, wealthy universities here. But that would be a game changer in Charlottesville.
Yes.
If UVA were to voluntarily, because it can't be compelled, voluntarily enter into a pilot agreement with Charlottesville, it would be a game changer.
Yeah. family, some of you may have heard it here first. And we're definitely going to follow up with you on that.
Absolutely,
I have some of our
absolutely.
friends from the city in as well to see what they think about that. But yeah, but Jalane, as always, it's been a pleasure. I feel smarter just knowing you.
Right, all right.
But yeah, but definitely, with all that was mentioned, what is the best ways for people to sort of follow your work or to reach out to you for any reason?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter, very, very online, and I'm at @Jalane_Schmidt, and we'll put that on your Facebook page. So we got that here. I gave a little tweet out to y'all before I came on air, 101 Jams there, and I should say thank you, Miss Emily, who brought me here too. Got to give her a shout out. So a lot of folks in our community. So yeah, Twitter's a good way.
Okay.
Also Memory Project at UVA is on Twitter, as is SIP Seville.
That's right.
It is also on Twitter. So
Awesome.
look at all the socials.
Thank you. Please keep up the good work, and definitely share like all of it so we can make sure that every nook and cranny, every corner of the community knows about it.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. So
Thanks, Charles.
Thank you. I am Major Family. We do have one more hour to go. So, and trust me, just like you didn't want to miss the show so far, you don't want to miss the rest. Tell a friend. It's Sir Charles IMHO Talk Show.